Welcome to Ramuh's Extreme Countdown. You may have heard of minimum ice level no echo or MINE runs, which is a very interesting way to challenge yourself with older content that may have been power crept over the years. For those unfamiliar, MINE runs sync your ice level to the minimum ice level allowed for the given duty, which is often much less than what you normally get synced to. For example, Ramuh Extreme would normally sync your gear to around item level 130, but at minimum item level, you would instead work with just item level 85. Similarly, whenever you wipe on attempts that go over a certain amount of time, you get an echo bonus, increasing your stats by around 10% or 5% on extreme content for each time it happens, peaking at 50% or 25% on extreme content. No echo disables this feature as well. Certain content also just gives you an echo bonus right out the gate, which is also disabled by this option. Now, when you enter a duty through the regular queue, you would be working with both only regular syncing and echo enabled, and in particular, the most common way you would land in an extreme through regular queue is either if you are a sprout and genuinely queue for that, or you are a mentor queuing mentor roulette that then fill those sprout groups. Just so it has been said, it is generally recommended that you use the Party Finder menu as opposed to the Duty Finder, the one you randomly queue with, to make your groups for extremes like this, as it usually leads to a much more likely chance for success. Some sprouts simply cannot do this, as you cannot make your own parties on the free trial. I will, however, say at the very least that if you do queue into an extreme like this, make sure to have done your homework. Read or watch a guide or something, maybe polish up on your skills with the job you want to play, do you have the best gear you can have, and so on. Now, that leads us to this video. As a mentor rouletteer myself, sometimes I wonder how many quote-unquote competent players you actually need to beat an extreme. The most effective way to answer this is of course a practical demonstration. Introducing the Extreme Countdown. We will do Ramuh Extreme with gradually less and less players in the group, synced indeed, not minimum item level, no echo, as this is how it would be in a random group. We continue to diminish the group after each success until we genuinely cannot beat a certain mechanic or meet a hardened rage. For Ramuh Extreme, it is technically possible to win with only one tank, however it is far more difficult and shaky to do so than with two. As such, we will start with two tanks. However, it is a possibility that a single healer can keep a smaller group alive, and given how raid-wide healing scales, one single very good healer might also be sufficient. As such, we will only bring one healer. This of course means we will bring 5 DPS to start, and then gradually scale down as we go. We will probably stick to 2 tanks until we have to drop one, if ever. Now, for particular mechanics that could stop us, Ramuh will frequently use Shock Strike on the current tank, which does a lot of damage and outright kills anyone caught in the area without surge protection. It strikes through invulnerabilities as well. Every time Ramuh casts Thunderstorm, a handful of orbs appear. Picking up 3 grants surge protection for 55 seconds, so naturally, tanks have to make sure to have this buff when tanking Ramuh. Picking orbs beyond 3 maintains surge protection, yes, but also reduces healing received. Orbs being present makes Ramuh's Thunderstorm do more damage, so we should try our best to clean up the floor of any orbs we don't need. Every so often, Ramuh will target 2 players with Chaotic Strike, which disables them effectively until they're hit by Thunderstorm or Shock Strike, and forces them to walk into the lethal Thunderspark he casts shortly after. At a lower player count, this will of course stop us harder, but will also massively increase the chance that Ramuh simply puts Thunderstorm on those players anyway. At exactly 64%, Ramuh summons adds that must be killed, as this works as a soft enrage. If Judgment Bolt is cast with any adds alive, we die. And the adds can use increased sentence, which actually only increases the damage of Judgment Bolt slightly, but is erroneously stated to shorten the time we have to deal with them on wikis. Thanks to CatDaemon for discovering the proper interaction. Once this ad phase is passed, the only remaining danger is the hardened rage that happens at 11 minutes. Additional ads later in the fight are untargetable. As Ramuh is ranged, the main tank can safely switch to attack a nearby ad as long as no one else comes close to it. With that, let's start the countdown, with a full 8-man group to start to use as a comparison as we go. So a strategy we will be employing for every clear is that whoever's currently tanking Ramuh hangs out near B, and chaotic strikes mean that you run towards A, allowing a single person to resolve both Horrifies. At this point, we're not yet entirely aware of how much the orbs increase the damage of Thunderstorm, which of course leads to this.
That didn't do very much damage.
And this.
Oh, that's a lot of damage.
Despite this, naturally, with a full team and even an extra DPS more than normal, we rush through each mechanic just fine. An interesting thing about Ramuh is that he sort of loops a few mechanics, meaning that the hard part is consistently dealing with them. The only additions throughout the fight being the ad phase, the tethers being used after the ad phase, and the extra untargetable ads in the last third of the fight. We did have 8 deaths over the course of the fight, plus a few close calls, but as long as most of the crew stays alive, the looping of the fight makes it possible to recover. We do briefly touch on how quickly your group can destabilize in the fight right at the end here, where we have a domino chain happening just as Ramuh dies. We clear in 3 minutes and 29 seconds. Countdown goes to 7. Ymir bows out. We go in again. An interesting aspect of Ramuh simply looping mechanics and then detouring to his ad intermission is that depending on when that intermission comes up, you can get in quite a lot of trouble. In particular, if he casts Chaotic Strike just as he reaches 64% HP, he will not do Thunderstorm to let you save your horrified friends. In fact, he will cast Chaotic Strike again before any Thunderstorms are forthcoming, meaning at least half of your raid will be stopped for a bit. With that said, this particular mix-up has not wiped us on its own, it has usually been a combination of things. We do wipe twice as 7 players, granting us 10% echo before we land a victory. As we progress through, it is getting more and more clear that those orbs left on the field are really starting to hurt. A thing we're also starting to notice is that our barrier healer may have trouble actually keeping up with the damage on a raid in this fight. But, as will probably be clear, consistently throughout this video, a wipe almost always results from some sort of sudden destabilization that immediately devolves into complete chaos, or we hold steady all the way to the finish line. In fact, after 2 wipes, our successful clear with 7 players had 0 deaths. We get the clear in 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Countdown goes to 6. Aradel bows out. We go in again. With only 6 players, it is starting to be a mild problem that Chaotic Strike can hit Zav just as they're about to taunt at the start. Supposedly, it is more likely to land on someone further away, so we start trying tricks like baiting, but it doesn't seem to be consistent. Other hypotheses include that a healer is always struck by Chaotic Strike, which, if you've been paying attention, also appears to not hold water, or thunder in water. With that said, we wipe 4 times before we land a victory, and only with 15% echo, as one of the wipes happened so soon that it didn't even grant us echo. Once again, we also noticed that the sheer amount of raid-wide damage is a bit overwhelming for a barrier healer. Despite all of these issues, we simply get good.
We tried get good, part of a healthy breakfast.
Another issue we've started to run into with less players is that the probability of 2 players both being horrified and getting the tether is much more likely. This means that if someone feels compelled to just run and grab orbs to deal with tether, they may well find themselves stuck out in the water for Thunderstorm. The solution is of course to deal with Horrify first, then tether. You can probably also imagine that the danger of Chaotic Strike into ad phase is much greater when it would stop 2/3 of the raid instead of just half. Ramuh goes down. We get the clear in 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and the countdown goes to 5. Cat Daemon bows out. We go in again. For the first significant change, I switch to Astrologian. The reason being that a pure healer can maintain a much greater healing per second on an entire party. A second reason is that at specifically level 50, Astrologian has better MP management, nearly the same damage output, and just better tools in my opinion, than White Mage. We also wipe 3 times with only 5 players, leading to 15% echo. At this point, we decide we need to get more structured about the tether mechanic, which isn't entirely shocking, get it? As you would make a priority for this anyway under more optimized circumstances. Our approach is, obviously, only one player grabs orbs. If one of the players is a tank, then they do it. If not, then the priority is Rust, Lesser, Shaq, and then me. Normally, healers would be higher priority than DPS, but given we only have one healer here, we come to the conclusion that it is better to let me stand still. Another thing that has started to become quite crucial is to have players intentionally waste orbs by grabbing 2 and letting the buff drop to clear the field. With the more structured approach, we don't need to preserve all of the orbs. We only need 3 for the tanks every minute or so, and 3 every tether. An additional benefit of maintaining lower orb count is that it is no longer lethal if 2 thunderstorm circles overlap. This will become important later. In our clear attempt with 5, we also feature the rare light speed hardcast rays, ensuring everyone is alive for the kill. We get the clear in 5 minutes and 10 seconds. Remember, the hardened rage is 11 minutes. The countdown goes to 4. Shaq bows out. We go in again. With only 4 players, some interesting changes happen. The players with Horrify are almost guaranteed to get the Thunderstorm on them to fix it, as it seems that Ramuh somewhat consistently puts Thunderstorm on 3 players. Another thing that can go wrong is that if Chaotic Strike happens to overlap with the add phase, then everyone's stopped, which is probably a wipe. With these few players, we also need to focus a lot more on killing the adds much quicker, and we only have 4 players to deal with Horrifies as needed, cleaning up orbs as needed, and also, surviving as needed. It puts a lot more focus on each individual player to do their part, as they have to do the work of almost 2 players each. With the high chance of thunderstorms overlapping, it is also a lot more dangerous to have 2 players stand next to each other for the Horrify mechanic in the first place. We actually also run into the reverse of the add phase problem. As the add phase finishes, Ramuh casts Chaotic Strike. Somehow, this is nowhere near as big of a problem though. Despite a tank death and an awkward tether to deal with, we do manage to recover after that. We even survive an overlapping double thunderstorm. This is essentially the reason why we need to clear up orbs. With too many orbs, it becomes a death sentence for me as the healer, if 2 thunderstorms overlap on me. And there is often nothing I can do about that. Oh yeah, another thing that ends up being helpful is Sinistry, due to the sheer amount of healing required at times. Now, despite all those hardships I listed here, we actually clear him first try, which is the first time we did this since 8 man, right? It takes 8 minutes and 30 seconds, and the countdown goes to 3. Rust bows out. We go in again. For 3 man, we decided that Scholar might be the right choice. This is both because with so few players, the mass amount of healing is drastically reduced. Furthermore, Adloquium's shields may sometimes allow us to survive something we otherwise shouldn't. Something that I was asked several times during the stream was why I was using Art of War so much, so I will explain this right now. Art of War is a gain on 1 until you learn Broil at level 54. This is because Art of War has the same potency as Ruin 1, and no cast time, allowing you to auto-attack more. Unless the MP cost gets in the way, unlikely, it is always better to use Art of War and auto-attacks if you can, in this level range. Now, it should probably not come as any surprise that we needed a full 25% echo before we beat the fight, but unlike with Shiva, we naturally progress to this point while practicing mechanics. At this stage, we have 3 obvious run enders for any attempt. 1. The Hardened Rage, obviously. 2. The Add Phase's Soften Rage. 3. If I am horrified inside 2 thunderstorms, with enough orbs on the field for them to 2-shot me, it is over. 2 tanks cannot do the rest of the fight without a heal at this level. Not even Warrior, they don't have Raw Intuition yet. As such, minimum orbs is a requirement. As we are only 3 players, I will pretty much never need to have the Surge Protection buff, as tethers will always be me and a tank. As a result, every time there's more than 3 orbs on the field, I need to grab 2. Exactly 2. If I get surge protection, then the fight is actually possibly over because we can't clear the field for a full minute. To deal with the add phase problem, I add mind tinctures to push for extra damage. I'm not entirely sure if the tanks did something similar, however, even the one tanking Ramuh had to assist with the adds for us to make it in time. Now, with all that said, let's take the play-by-play of the final attempt. As always, Ramuh starts with Thunderstorm, and since we have 3 players exactly, he will always Thunderstorm all 3 of us. Chaotic Strike comes out, which hits everyone who isn't tanking Ramuh, and is immediately resolved automatically by Thunderstorm. Note that the random thunderstorms not attached to players could possibly be anywhere, so it is just random luck if they don't overlap. Zip clears up 2 orbs we didn't need and then gets ready for a tank switch. Then I clear orbs we don't need, another Chaotic Strike, with Xav being inches away from a triple overlap. 2 orbs are removed, more orbs are cleared, and Xav prepares for a tank switch, and another Chaotic Strike comes up. More orbs are cleared. Around 2.5 minutes into the fight, the add phase begins. I pop a tincture to boost my dots as I spread on all of the adds for an initial damage boost. Chaotic Strike comes again, and with so few players, the purple lightning beams are much more likely to pile on a single person. Yet more orbs are removed while I reapply dots, yet another Chaotic Strike, and here we get rewarded for dealing with orbs. Inches from a triple overlap, I just barely survive, and we continue. Unfortunately, now I also have static condensation, so orb grabbing is not an option for a while. We try to hold on with Zip and Xav both standing in to clear orbs in my place. Another Chaotic Strike, and the adds are cleared fully after 1 minute and 57 seconds. Reminder that the soft enrage is around 2 minutes. With the adds down, we simply have to manage the mechanics we know and tether. An interesting detail about tether that we discovered is that if there is only one viable target due to the surge protection, it seems to just attach to one person until a second target becomes available. Very strange. Ramuh passes 50% HP at around 5 minutes and 30 seconds of combat. We continue onward with orb clearing, chaotic strikes and tank swaps. And then we have Horrify, tethers and a tank swap all at once, leading to Zip dying. Due to the tank switch timing, we had the time to recover. We return to more looping of mechanics and then suddenly we almost get wombo comboed from save to death. This leads to both tanks having static condensation, and this is where tether gets weird. It just hung out and built up on me and didn't attach to anyone else until there was someone without surge protection. Isn't that strange? The reason this is scary is because the stacking debuff makes the punishment more and more severe. We continue on a bit, and now, again, because we have 2 players with surge protection, it is simply stuck on Xav. Although that is resolved by Xav grabbing protection, getting ready for a tank switch. But just as I start to think ahead to how we will survive with limited orb grabbing capacity, Ramuh goes down, after 9 minutes and 52 seconds with 25% echo. As we had about 10% time left before Hard Enrage, and the add phase was already far too tight, it seems to be entirely off the table to do Ramuh Extreme with less than 3 players. And with that, we know that you need at least 3 players to defeat Ramuh Extreme Synced. And again, I thought you'd need at least 4, huh? I hope this will motivate some future mentors if they see this fight, and recognize at least a pair of competent tanks and a healer in their group. It might be possible. I hope you found this all entertaining, and if you felt I skipped through things a bit too fast, you can find the full stream of this endeavor in the video description.
Easy first try.
Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, it was believed that the Grey Arbiter's increased sentence reduces the total time before the soft enrage. However, Cat Damon managed to test and discover that it actually just increases the damage of Judgment Bolt slightly, peaking at around double damage. The Softened Rage always does around 33 to 35,000 damage regardless of increased sentence. However, knowing that increased sentence does not actually affect the timer means we now know that the ad phase lasts just about 2 minutes, consistently. Bonus fun fact, according to Aurelia's testing, thunderstorms never strike randomly perfectly in the center, making it a safe spot. That would have been nice to know earlier.